more about referrals in a minute. Pop quiz. Can anyone tell me the biggest industry here on the Gold Coast or in the Gold Coast region? Wrong.
Real estate.
Got it. One.
What is it?
Health.
Oh,
Health and allied health contributes $3.9 billion a year to the Gold Coast economy. Does anyone know what the second one is?
Real estate.
Sorry? Nope. Close though. It's construction. It's about 3.7 billion.
And diminishing.
And well, it'll change, of course. Number three. Anyone know what number three is?
Education.
Not quite. It's actually advanced manufacturing. We build everything from rockets, satellites, electric buses. We have a huge and diverse economy. Tourism sits around about 4 or 5 now. I think it's about 3.2 billion, roughly. It has decreased a fair bit from the halcyon days of 2018 and 2019. But it's interesting just to compare that. So the economy is worth about $41 billion a year that comes out of the Gold Coast. Next place is, interestingly enough, the third biggest council area, which is Moreton Bay, which is about 40 billion. So it gives you a bit of an idea of the size of the economy and just how diverse it's become. Now, it's interesting that a lot of people, and Campbell actually introduced this about talking about networks and referrals and the importance of that. In a way, well, in a big way, that's really what my job is. I've spent 30 odd years way before council. I've only been with council for a couple of years. You can probably tell that. So if anyone wants to make a joke about council workers, which
Where's the other 5?
Yeah, I've only really worked for council for about 2 years. So most of my working life has been with multinationals and medium-sized businesses. But one thing I've learned over all of that is referrals and networking is what makes your business work. It doesn't matter if you've got the best product, it doesn't matter if you're the best spruiker, it doesn't matter if you have a massive marketing campaign, unless you have a good solid network and you know how to use that network, you're not going to be your full potential. And it's interesting, if you look right through the business history, you can go back to Roman times, you can go back to before that, the businesses that networked were the ones that were successful. Big successful Roman businessmen used to actually parlay with the court, the Roman court, and they would hold games in the honour of the emperor, and they would actually get the business contracts around the city of Rome. So it's interesting, this has been going on for a hell of a long time. So it's nothing new, but so many people forget about it. So what is my role? So technically I'm a business engagement officer is the title. It'll probably change in coming days and weeks, who knows. Restructures are like that in councils. But anyway, the point of my role is to go out and talk to business and group businesses together, link businesses together, try to create partnerships and collaborations. And in fact, that's one of the most effective ways of actually assisting business, as opposed to providing grants or initiatives or whatever, or government money, because it's not sustainable. None of that is sustainable. The only way businesses can be sustainable and resilient is if they start working together and their supply chains are linked. One of the most important jobs that I have on the coast is to make sure that supply chains are kept as close and as regional as possible, because that obviously mitigates a lot of risk, and we've seen that since COVID. Those organisations that were sourcing part of their supply chains from overseas, for example, were in for a big surprise, and they got it. In talking to Yatala businesses just recently, one of the reasons why a lot of businesses like Yatala is because of the proximity to Brisbane. So they still have their Gold Coast supply chains, they also have the Brisbane supply chains, they've got a link to the labour force in Brisbane as well. Logan and Beenleigh, as well as the Gold Coast. And in terms of transport, it sits right in the middle, they're right next to the freeway. So the role that I have is quite broad. So yes, it's also about initiatives and grants, and I like to, I often link businesses to state and federal as well as council type grants. But more often than not, I find that the most successful way to assist businesses is to start getting businesses to talk to one another and see what resources they have. And there's very often a lot of low cost / free services that they can access from different arms of government as well to assist them. So for example, a bit of an anecdote here. If you look at during the COVID period, you might remember that play money was introduced by the council and state government. Now, what was interesting about that was that I think it was $50 you paid, and you could spend 100, so you got an extra 50, if I remember correctly. The council threw in, I think it was $1.5 million, and the state government was about 2.5 or something like that. Anyway, the point is that the businesses that had a strong social media marketing campaign and also had strong links with other businesses, and I saw it was just someone was just saying just before that it was you yourself, you were linking with another business to provide a co-promotion. Brilliant concept, because what it does, it adds value to your business and the other business. So those businesses, going back to my anecdote, sorry I was doing a bit of a Billy Connolly going around, I'll come back again. So those businesses that were able to use their social media network and also to leverage off other businesses by doing joint promotions did extremely well. There was a toy shop in the Strand down at Coolangatta in 1 week with that voucher system did $90,000 worth of business because she had such a good social media platform that she was using to promote the fact that you could spend that voucher there. Conversely, those businesses who didn't have a very strong digital marketing footprint or didn't have a strong network with other businesses and were relying on foot traffic said to me, and this is a paraphrase quote from many, it didn't do anything for us. Well, of course it didn't, you didn't apply it. Mm-hmm. So the big takeaway from that was that anything that government does, there needs to be skin in the game in terms of that voucher system. For example, recent governments have thrown money, I'm not saying which governments, recent governments have thrown money out to the population and said, here's some money, go spend it. That's useless because most of them spend it on bills, right, or the casino or whatever. But the point is that if you say, right, well, with a voucher system, if you have some skin in the game, if you say, well, you know, you've got to pay for half of it or whatever, we'll give you the other half. You're then motivated to go and spend it. That's a good targeted way of using government money. So personally, because I've worked so long in the private sector, I'm a very big proponent of businesses working together to find their own problems out, and where government intervention is required, and it is sometimes, particularly in terms of procurement, because government spending on services is a great source of revenue for lots of businesses. And I can only say to you, if you're not on vendor panel, VENDOR, vendor panel, register yourself, because state government has decreed that all local governments should be procuring at least 30% of their services and goods that they require to operate from local businesses. So just remember that vendor panel is a really good one to use.
Is it a website? Is it?
Yeah, if you just go onto the City Council website and just do a search for vendor panel, you'll find it and you can register. And if anyone wants the link, grab one of my cards and I'll just shoot you the link. Okay,
Oh,
they're there somewhere.
We'll share it on
Yeah.
Facebook, and I'll
Yeah.
share it next
Yeah.
week in the email.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
But I digress a lot. But the other thing I want to talk about was small business in general. Here's another pop quiz. Does anyone know how much or what percentage of the Australian economy small business represents?
80-90%, that's pretty high.
You're getting pretty close. It's actually 97.5%.
Wow.
Wow.
And small business employs 1/3 of the Australian workforce. So any influence that local government, state government, federal government can have on the success and the conditions for small business has a massive flow-on effect in the economy, massive. Which is why for the last 2 years we've been pushing internally at the council for the Gold Coast City to join the Small Business Friendly Charter. Now you may or may not have heard of this. It's a state government initiative. There's now 47, I think, 47 councils out of how many is it, 75, something like that, in the state, that have now joined that. So what that means is that you would have all had the experience, including myself. You'll ring up about a permit that's required for your business, or could be anything that's controlled by a council. And after you've gone through 3 different operators and 5 different departments, and you loop back to the first one, and then they say, we can't do that because that's another department. And then they say, oh no, we don't do that because we just don't understand it. And that goes, that whole day's gone. Now that's probably an exaggeration, but I feel your pain. You should try working in it. So the reason why the city economy branch, of which I'm part of, the reason why we've been pushing to join this charter is because the charter, which is signed by the mayor and also the CEO, means that there is a push for all departments within the council, whenever they make a decision, is this in the best interest of small business? That's a fundamental change in attitude. As opposed to saying we know best because we make the laws, actually, is this going to help small business, which in turn, is this going to help create wealth in the community? Is this actually going to give us good community outcomes? So it's really important sign-on, which just happened just recently for the City of Gold Coast. It's taken a couple of years to get us there, but we're there. So over the next few months, the City Economy Division will be meeting with all the other divisions saying, this is what it means for your department. So I'm not going to pick out a department because that would be nasty.
Yeah.
So I could. So that's a really, really important change that's now happening. And there's quite a few Queensland councils that have already signed on to that. In terms of the Gold Coast, there's 76,000 businesses in total. 46,000 of those businesses have, wrong figure. 29,000 of those businesses have between 1 and 19 employees, which is, by the way, the classification for small business. But a further 45,000 don't employ anyone. So you can imagine if we can create conditions for small business that makes it more, that allows them to grow. If they employ one person, the impact that has on the total economy is massive, is huge. So that's where our focus in city economy is to really assist small business. That's not to say that we take our eyes off medium-sized enterprises and big businesses, which are really important as well. But the small businesses, given the number of them and the impact they can have on employment, has huge outcomes for the community in general. So that's where you guys come into it. But sort of looping back to what we're talking about, networking, it's really encouraging to see what you're doing here this morning, because that is the most important thing, is if you can refer other businesses, if you can include other businesses in your supply chain, it only makes your business and other businesses stronger, which then leads to potential more employment and more rates, so I can get paid more wages. And no, that was a joke.
Well, half joke.
Well, Freudian slip. Yeah, Freudian slip. That's it. Yeah. Going back to Shakespeare, the world's a stage. All the world's a stage.
Well, that's why you're on.
Full of sound and fury, and
We've had a
signifying nothing.
proposal up here, Lily.
Yes, really.
Yeah. I heard the chime go, so I could probably.
Yeah,
I
it's
can-
probably good to go to questions.
Yes, I
if we
will. I'll
can.
flick it over to questions and so forth. And yes, go for it, please. I
thanks-
can't answer it. No, sorry.
Oh.
Next.
Next.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you for your chat. It's really good to hear all of the information that you've shared. I'm just wondering whether or not council has plans to support small business sort of survival through what looks like it might be a tricky few years ahead with the economy.
Could be. Look, the Gold Coast has been one of the most resilient regions in the country. In fact, we bounced back after COVID faster than any other region. And that was in an economic report that we did just recently. However, I know that's a bit of a politician's answer. I'm not a politician. I would never want to be one of them. They have a really shit job. But to answer your question, look, our programs and policies change all the time. So at the moment, we're reviewing all of the programs that we run for business at the moment. So we're about to introduce very soon for the southern region in particular, because they were hit, it's a pilot scheme, a coaching service which will cover the basics of business acumen. So, and that will then be a feeder program that goes into our GAP, which is Growth Accelerator Program, to try and help small businesses take that next step. So it's about building resilience. The other thing is that there's a lot of referrals that I can make to state and government funded programs around things like, for example, digital marketing. So a lot of businesses, for example, realise they need digital marketing. So they go and spend $8,000 or whatever it is with some crowd, and they say, here it all is, and they bugger off to the Bahamas, all right? There's programs that cost little as $50 and give you 7, 8, 10 hours and teach you how to do it, so that, because you know your business better than anyone else. So there's all these little programs, and it's very hard to be specific standing here, but you know, if a business comes to me and said, this is the issue we've got, or if it's labour or lack of labour or skill shortage or whatever, there's ways that we can talk about that and work with that.
So
But
we as individuals can come and talk to you?
that's what I do all day long.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, oh, go on.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
With this group, you've heard what people do here, and obviously that's been your world prior to going to council.
Yep.
What could you recommend as a group or individuals in this group they should do to promote their business? They do share and refer a lot of business.
What you're doing now is
Anything
great.
specific?
What you're doing is really, it's an
If there's
excellent
anything
thing.
else, we're all ears.
Not all businesses can use digital marketing effectively. So, for example, one that could be challenging was a fella here from a surfing school before. I don't know where you. There you go. So there you go. Well, that's a bit of a challenging one because of the nature of your business. Digital marketing, I've been going on about it a little bit because we've seen some huge impacts to businesses by employing it, and it's not just having a website. People think it's not a website. It's about interacting with social media, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. That's too many anyway. But that's part of it. But understanding that and having influencers, having people working for you is important. The other big one is staff retention. If people were to say to me, what's a big one to secure your growth and your viability, it's staff retention. Because at the moment, it's a seller's market for staff. They can basically go wherever they want and probably get an uptick regardless of their skills, abilities, and whether or not they fall asleep in the job. So it's really important to have strong retention strategies, and it's not always about money. How flexible is your workplace? Can they work from home? Some can't, I know. Yours couldn't. It'd be very hard to catch a wave in your bedroom.
He's got a spa.
Yeah. But yes. Yeah, so look, I can only emphasise how important staff retention is at the moment because there's too few going around. Having said that, and you touched on it, that might not be a problem in 6 to 8 months' time. We may have a rash of more staff coming into the market, it's hard to say. Another little thing added to that is I think the unemployment rate at the moment is 2.9% on the Gold Coast, roughly, 2.9 to 3.1, something like that. What's interesting about that is that with so few staff or so few people left in the pool, so to speak, and this is a horrible thing to say. There's about 19,000 of them, I think it is, on the Gold Coast. But there's a reason why they still haven't got a job. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
And in talking to some businesses, I was talking to a business the other day, and they were saying, we've tapped into this source of that 19,000 through a particular agency that deals particularly with the long-term unemployed. It's great for a week or so, and then they fail a drug test, or they don't turn up for work. So at the moment, what's left is not great. Comes back to staff retention. Mind you, as I said, years' time could be a different story.
Yes, Andrew?
Yeah.
Just, can you just elaborate why you think it'll be hard for Will and the Surf Skill to do digital marketing?
Okay.
I would have thought he's got great content.
Yep.
He's got social media. That's
Yep.
a perfect platform for a surf school.
Yeah, look, I know what you're saying. I was sort of being from a very practical point of view. I was talking about the actual. I probably worded that wrong. You're quite right. But you're right. What I was actually getting from a point of view of having like customer stories and all the rest of it. Yes, it is. From an experiences that you can share on social media, fantastic, great marketing, definitely. In fact, there was a program run 12 months ago by the council for tourist operators in experiential marketing. So yes, that side of it, definitely, but what I was referring to is the delivery, because your delivery requires a beach and a wave and that sort of stuff. So that's what I was referring to, sorry. Good clarification.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Chris, we actually
Yep.
went on the council's
Yep.
one that was done
Yep.
through Deep Dive, I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah, it
Yep.
was absolutely brilliant, and I recommend it to absolutely everybody. It costs nothing.
I was a bit worried there for a
genuinely
minute.
didn't.
Yeah.
We were part of the pilot
Yeah.
program, And we were all accommodation, tours,
Yeah.
the guys who do
Yeah.
the surfboarding and things.
Yeah.
And honestly, we get together on a regular basis and the outcome for everybody was phenomenal.
Oh, that's good.
And we might even divide, just thinking out aloud, and then divide into groups that are similar type of groups. We did it recently, but we might even just look at that more closely in the next couple of weeks as well. Now, on top of that is Anita's business has progressed so significantly over the last 3 to 4 years in New South Wales and here. She's a big face, but most of her, we all have different things that we do in order to promote our business. A big part of hers has been Facebook marketing, etc. And she's right onto it all the time, etc. And I spoke to Anita a few weeks ago that I think it'd be good just doing a little Facebook marketing in simple layman terms that might help anybody, which confirms what you've been saying as well too. And I think it's probably time next week, instead of having a speaker, you can be total control.
The next wave actually in digital marketing is what we would call experiential marketing. Because a lot of people talk about the death of the mall, you know, because you can buy online. I would say that's wrong, because if you've got a shop inside a shopping centre and you're selling goods and you're concerned that you're being beaten on price all the time by, you know, online operators, people still want to touch and feel goods. But you have to make it a good experience though. So good of experience, they go, oh, bugger it, put the phone away, I'll buy it now and go, right? Because they've had such a good time in the store.
You forgot to take my jammies off, put the wine down.
It's true. And look, there'll always be a segment of the market that are going to be like that, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so experiential marketing is a huge part of this, and you know, even from your perspective, if I'm not saying because it costs you money, I'm not saying do this all the time, but if you would offer strategically budget or free lessons to certain segments or a particular influencer, that could be very, very useful for you on your socials. Just a thought.
And Chris, you're happy for someone to speak to you and give advice, because you obviously
I
got a lot
know
of good business.
So
acumen.
I know a lot of
Yeah.
businesses that
Yeah.
provide those services
Yeah.
as well, so I can refer you
Refer
to those.
to whoever.
And that keeps the money
Gotcha.
in the economy again.
Gotcha.
All right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, rather than
Maybe
someone
2
in
more
Brisbane.
questions,
Yeah.
etc. First in, first served.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Go on.
I just to let you know, sorry, there's nothing against the council, but
Yeah.
we
Oh, don't worry, I've got plenty of complaints.
4 years
Yeah.
ago we
Yeah.
had a
Yep.
contract. We're going to go for solar
Yep.
panels for the
Yep.
whole of the
Oh,
coast.
yeah.
We went
Yep.
with Melbourne company.
Yep.
So is that changing the contract? Like, because we actually use a local panel provider as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, right. That's
yeah.
Tom Tate
So-
spoke here the other week, was
Yeah.
very good too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a great question, and at the moment I'm going through this process for a tender, and there's, without letting too much out, there's a panel that does it, and there's a lot of different parts to how an assessment is made on who is going to win a contract. Obviously probity is really important, so whatever decision's made, if we have to ever stand in court and say yes, we made that decision based on these good facts. So we have to be very careful with who we award contracts to based on probity issues, right? Now I'm not saying there's any issue there, I'm just simply saying that's an important part of the process. However, probably since the time that you've done that, there has been changes in the level of procurement that needs to be local. So the state government has in fact put a mandate through to all local governments saying that at least 30% of what you procure, at least, must be sourced locally. And there's also now sovereign capability comes into it as well. So you just mentioned that before, that you've sourced the panels locally.
Yes.
So sovereign capability comes into it as well,
Okay.
as opposed to buying it all from Shengdao or something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
AJ first.
Couple of questions. Will the play money come back in?
Sorry, I missed that.
Play money. It was very successful.
Yeah, look, it was really successful. Look, that
The
sort
reason
of.
why I asked is because
Yep.
at the Northern Rivers, New
Yep.
South Wales, last year, they
Yep.
actually introduced back to school.
Oh, that's
lunches.
right, they
It
did.
was
Yeah,
such a successful. We did about 70
Yeah.
grand worth of sales,
yeah.
and something like Queensland or whatever, especially now, times are tough for all the parents. Something like play school, or
Look
after
at-
school vouchers. I'm just thinking.
It depends, yeah, look, it depends very much on the overall need and what the priorities are at the time. Obviously during COVID,
Yeah.
you know, when you had state governments and federal governments effectively saying you can't run your business, it was an emergency situation. Something had to be done to get that demand going again.
So
Yeah.
we won't ask any more questions now, but you can ask
Yeah.
Chris straight after the meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're going down to Urban Cafe afterwards, but if you
I don't
want
even
to.
know where Urban Cafe is.
Okay, fine.
can
Anita will
follow us.
shout
Yeah.
your coffee as well
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
She's good at that.
Yeah.
She